Alright, good morning, afternoon, or evening, no matter where you are in the world. Okay, I'd like to go over three of my articles today. First, before I go over the three articles, specifically with the first one, I'd like to let you know this is for review, information, and education purposes. As in review, informational, and educational purposes. It is not to take the credit for the intellectual property which goes to the publisher, in this case is Daily Mail, and by the story by Alice White for dailymail.com. With that said, let's go into the headline. Hawaii fires. Maui's emergency leader resigns, citing health reasons a day after claiming it didn't matter. His team didn't set off island sirens as death toll hits 111. I won't try to convince you of anything. Just that's what the headline says. My goal is to give you the information and have you make your own decision based upon being informed. There's three key points to remember from this article. Number one, Chief Herman Ndaya resigned on Thursday, citing health reasons. Number two, it comes a day after defending not activating warning sirens as the fatal wildfires swept across the island. Number three, the death toll from the disaster has now hit 111 and is expected to keep rising. Into the article. The head of Maui's emergency management agency resigned on Thursday, citing health reasons. It comes a day after Chief Herman Ndaya faced fierce backlash by saying he did not regret not activating warning sirens as the wildfire swept across the island. Ndaya said he opted to send out alerts via mobile devices, radio waves, television, and the country's opt-in resident alarm system, but not via siren. Despite the claim warning sirens could have saved hundreds of people, Ndaya argued the systems are generally used for tsunami warnings, and Hawaiians are trained to seek higher ground when they do go off. Which would have led them toward the blazing inferno. It has since emerged that the official has a story of downplaying the importance of the island's siren systems. You can see a picture here of the person here. Governor Josh Green said he expects the official death toll will rise about 10 people per day for the next week. Officials have not said what they believe the real figure will be. And for the second photo here, Ndaya has claimed that even if the sirens had sounded, there would be significant swaths of island where there was no sirens and people would have therefore have not hypothetically be saved by them. You can see it's like burnt up cars and other things, as well as the trees and things. Other vociferous things as well. Or vociferous life, as in plant life. Maui County Mayor Richard Bisson, that's Bisen, said in a statement on Thursday that he had accepted Ndaya's resignation. Given the gravity of the crisis we're facing, my team and I will be placing someone in this key position as quickly as possible, and I look forward to making that announcement soon, Bisson said. Ndaya defended his experience and qualification for office during the midweek press conference held by Governor Josh Green. Quote, had we sounded the siren that night, we're afraid that people have gotten Mauka, which is toward the mountains, and if that was the case, they would have gone into the fire, he said. I should also note that there was no sirens Mauka on the mountainside. There was where the fire was spreading down, so even if he sounded the siren, we would not save those people out there on the mountainside. The response came after reporters said that several survivors of the fire, which claimed the lives of at least 111 people, said the neighbors and loved ones may have been saved if the sirens had gone off before they noticed the 1,000-degree flames rolling towards their houses. Andaya had a pattern of downplaying the importance of the island's siren system in the years leading up to the tragedy, NBC News reported. In meetings dating back to 2019, he repeatedly called sounding the civil service sirens, quote, a last resort, unquote. According to a meeting transcript of the county's Public Safety Commission. And here you can see a picture of this. People walk past destroyed by wildfire in Lahaina. I have that. Lahaina? I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. Search teams have covered an estimated 38% of the impacted area. Also here we can see a picture of the mayor. Maui Mayor Richard Bisson, Bisen, defending Andaya at Wednesday's press conference alongside Governor Green. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing their names entirely correctly, but search operations continue in Lahaina as hopes fades that any survivors will be found, though some 1,300 people remain missing. You can see the wreckage here. Wreckage from the flame, that is. And there's another photo here. Lahaina's banyan near the town's historic courthouse building is known as the oldest living banyan tree in the U.S. Wow. But the tree in the courthouse had been severely damaged. Andaya had made remarks to the commissioners in the recent years after monthly tests found some were not working, and in one case after a false alarm, the publication reported. Now here you can see a video of the devastation and the damage. And it looks like somebody who says Washington State has come to help out. The reporter on Wednesday's conference also seemed to question Daya's resume and how he had no prior experience in emergency management before taking on his current role in 2017. He was chief of staff to a former mayor. The member of the press then asked if he would consider handing further responsibility off to someone else. And Daya said that the claim he didn't have experience before assuming his current position is, quote, not true. He argued his employment history includes time in the housing department and a staffer in the mayor's cabinet, during which time, quote, reported to the emergency operations centers. Quote, to say that I am not qualified, unquote, I think is incorrect, he added. Both Governor Green and Maui Mayor Richard Bisson defended Andaya against journalist quasi-accusations. Green agreed his reaction to hearing the sirens would be to expect a tsunami. Governor Green confirmed Wednesday the death toll had risen to 110, though search teams have canvassed just 38% of the impacted territory. So it could be almost 3 times as much. It's pretty amazing. Not in a good way, though. Maria Layankia is a Catholic church in downtown Lahaina is still standing amidst the rubble. And then there's another picture here. Carol Hartley, 60, from Alabama, was one of the first wildfire victims to be identified. That's unfortunate. And there's another picture here. Clyde Wakita is pictured with his wife of 46 years, Penny. He died trying to save the house they built together 35 years ago. Then you have another photo here. It's Frankie Trejos, 68, died trying to shelter Sam, a golden retriever. Both was found dead inside a car. Wow, that's too bad. Officials, including Green, have said the death toll will likely continue to climb in the next few weeks. Weeks now, not weeks. There is increasing concern that numerous children grew at home because schools were closed and parents were at work are among the dead. Our parents work 1, 2, or 3 jobs just to get by, and they can't afford to take a day off. Jessica Sill, a kindergarten teacher at Lahania's King Kamahea, the third elementary school, told the Wall Street Journal, quote, "Without school, there was nowhere for meaning the kids to go that day." Unquote. The death toll has grown to at least 111 people, and there is now a growing fear that many children are among the dead, as they were left home alone when schools delayed opening due to power outages before the storm. A kindergarten teacher in Lahania said the 7-year-old boy, who was the cousin of 2 of her former students, was found dead alongside in his family in a burned-out car. Jessica Sill, who teaches at a King Kamahea III elementary school, told the Wall Street Journal, "Our parents work 1, 2, 3 jobs, 1, 2, 3 jobs just to get by, and they can't afford to take a day off." As they mentioned earlier, she said, "Without school, there was nowhere for," referring to kids, meaning kids, to go that day. Public schools in Maui have started the process of reopening, and traffic has resumed on a major road, and signs of a painful recovery process is underway. So, I will pose the question to you. What do you think of this highway wildfires in Maui? Do you think the mayor was right in what he did? And what is your opinion on the matter? I welcome you to give that your opinion in the comments below below the video. Just keep in mind that I don't allow any threatening language or any derogatory language. The purpose here is for constructive dialogue. That is to add to what has already been said in the article. Now let's get to the second article here. And before I talk about the second article, I would like to let you know the review of this article is for review, information, or informational and educational purposes. It is not to take the credit for the intellectual property, which belongs to the publisher, which is Business Insider, and the story by Insider at Insider.com called Eden. Okay. Now, to the article. Headline reads, U.S. is quietly warning its Middle East partners about the cost of stocking up on Chinese-made weapons. You can see a picture of the Chinese president and looks like the Saudi Arabian king? Is he the king? I'm not sure. China's Xi Jinping, Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Now, here's the 3 key ideas to remember from this article. Number 1, Middle Eastern countries, including longtime U.S. partners, are buying more Chinese weapons. Number 2, U.S. officials have warned that Chinese-made weapons can't be used alongside U.S.-made hardware. Number 3, China isn't offering direct alternatives to what U.S. is selling, but Washington is still wary. I'll let you decide if you agree with those statements or not. Let me give you the facts or the information from this article as it's displayed here. U.S. officials are warning about China's arms sales in the Middle East, saying that they could undermine the U.S. military's ability to integrate with its partners in the region. China isn't offering weapons that could directly replace U.S. arms, but the growing interest in what Beijing is selling reflects a longer-term desire by the Middle Eastern countries to diversify their suppliers and their increasing concerns about U.S. commitment to the region, experts say. Chinese arms sales in the Middle East have increased by 80% over the past decade, a result of Beijing's expanding relationship there and the willingness to deliver arms faster with fewer stipulations than Washington. General Micah Kurilla is the head of U.S. Central Command, told the Senate Armed Services Committee in March that there had been, quote, a significant increase, unquote, in Chinese foreign military sales in the Middle East. Chinese officials, quote, open up their entire catalog, unquote, Kurilla added. He said they give them express shipping. They give them no end-user agreement. They give them financing. You can see a picture here. It's China Wang Lung II drone in Dubai. If there is a Chinese equipment there, we cannot integrate it with U.S. equipment, Kurilla said, adding that because Chinese arms sales move much faster, the U.S. is, quote, in a race to integrate with our partners before China can fully penetrate the region, unquote. Colin Kahl, formerly the U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, recently warned the widespread adoption of Chinese military hardware could interfere with the establishment of network of air defense systems that the Biden administration has been discussing with U.S. partners in the region. Well, one thing that's not going to lead to integrated air and missile defense is a bunch of Chinese military equipment in these countries that won't be able to be interoperable with our systems. They won't be able to plug into whatever network we're building because of the counterintelligence programs. Call told in an audience at Chatham House, a British think tank, in July, shortly before stepping down from his post at the Pentagon. And you can see, there's a slideshow here. It says, there's a picture here. It says Saudi Arabia's Neom. It's a $500 billion futuristic city being built in the desert. It can morph into a surveillance dystopia. Saudi Arabia is building a futuristic megacity called Neom deep in the desert, bordering the Red Sea. The state has pledged at least $500 billion to make it happen and is soliciting further investment. He said, that's not punitive, Cole added. We're not going to let Chinese air defense systems interact with our network, and I think our partners understand that. Cost-effective and prolific, and you can see from this picture, the Saudi Army Air Force F-15 fighter jets are pictured in the background. And that's copyright Faye Norderling via AFP via Getty Images. Middle Eastern countries led by the Arab Gulf states have for decades been major buyers of U.S.-made weapons. The trend is shifting, however. In 2010, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates bought Chinese armed drones at a time when U.S. wouldn't export such weaponry. Chinese arms sales to the region are, quote, substantial and expected to continue to increase, said Ahmed Abdurat, an associate fellow at the Chatham House. That is, Riyadh and Abu Dhabi recently bought large quantities of Turkish-built drones, but that reflects a desire, quote, to diversify their procurement policy, unquote, rather than a move away from China, Abdullah said, if I pronounced his name correctly. China has long focused on, quote, filling the gap of light, low-cost combat weapon systems, unquote, which has been encouraged by the U.S.'s hesitance to sell such arms to its partners in the Middle East and North Africa, Abdullah said. Quote, hence, China's export to the regions has been dramatic. And there's a picture here. This is copyright U.S. Air Force Tech Sergeant James Hodgman. It's a Patriot missile at Al Udeid, Qatar. Now, these sales are, quote, an inseparable component, unquote, of China's, quote, worldwide strategy of becoming a major arms producer and controlling a more significant global share in weapons sales, unquote, than U.S., Russia, and Europe, rather than, quote, part of a clear-eyed Chinese regional military strategy, unquote, Abdullah told Insider. When it comes to air defenses, the Gulf state operates high-end U.S.-made weapons like the Patriot and the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, which made its combat debut when the UAE used it to shoot down some ballistic missiles fired from Yemen in January 2022. No Middle Eastern country has bought high-end Chinese air defense systems like the HQ-22, China's version of Russia's S-300. Turkey contemplated buying China's HQ-9 and S-300 derivative in 2013, prompting NATO warnings about interoperability issues. Ankara instead bought Russia's S-400, which drew similar warnings and eventually led the U.S. to kick Turkey out of the F-35 program. Here we can see another photo of it. This is copyright Andrew Carbello Reynolds Pool. That's AFP via Getty Images, copyright, and that's pictured in the background is the Patriot missile defense in Saudi. While U.S. is concerned about China's arms sales to the Middle Eastern countries, China isn't offering direct alternatives to what the U.S. is selling. China arms sales to the Middle East are important because they are cost-effective and prolific, but Beijing is not selling the most strategic, high-end, technologically advanced equipment, says Emily Hawthorne, a senior Middle East and North Africa analyst with the risk intelligence company RANE. Well, if that dynamic shifted and Beijing became the provider of much more advanced equipment, it would be a critical development for the U.S., but that's not likely, Hawthorne told Insider. And pictured here is China Container Khalifa Port, Abu Dhabi, UAE, copyright Xinhua via Getty Images. Middle Eastern countries' engagement with China has already influenced what the U.S. is willing to sell them. However, U.S. approved the sale of 50 F-35s and 18 MQ-48 drones. MQ-4B drones to the UAE for $19 billion in January 2021. But Washington slow-walked the deal out of concern about China's involvement in UAE's 5G infrastructure and its Port Khalifa. Abu Dhabi ultimately suspended the deal in December 2021. Since then, UAE has bought 12 Chinese L-15 trainer aircraft and is participating in an Air Force exercise in China this month, the first such drill between these countries. While deepening defense research and security ties between Beijing and the Arab Gulf states aren't surprising to the U.S., they remain, quote, concerning for the U.S. national security, unquote. Hawthorne said, but that likely won't be seen as a threat if those countries, quote, maintain their currently robust security, intelligence, and political relationships with Washington as well, unquote. Here you see a picture Abu Dhabi Mohammed bin Zayed, China, and also China Xi Jinping, copyright Andy Wong via the AFP, Andy Wong AFP via Getty Images. Abdullah said the U.S. had, quote, special, or in this case, specific concerns, unquote, about UAE's, quote, intensifying military relations, unquote, with Beijing, as well as a dismay about Saudi Arabia receiving Chinese help with its civilian nuclear program and, quote, suspicions of a separate ballistic missile program, unquote. Abdullah argued that the U.S. is worried about, quote, increasing military exchanges, unquote, about China and Arab Gulf states. It should, quote, tackle the rising perceptions of declining U.S. commitment to regional security, unquote. If these countries aren't getting what they want from the U.S., they'll have no option but to look for alternatives, which will undoubtedly undermine U.S. security and military interests, added. Hawthorne said Cull and Guerrilla's warnings were an outgrowth of, quote, the many years, unquote, U.S. has spent, quote, trying to scrape together an integrated air defense system, unquote, in the region. China's inroads with the Gulf Cooperation Council and its rising prominence as a, quote, trusted partner to historically U.S.-aligned governments like the UAE and Saudi Arabia, is certainly one factor hampering the ability to pull together such a system, unquote. Hawthorne added, but it's just one factor among many, including varying threat perceptions of Iran among the Arab Gulf states, as well as varying levels of trust between the Arab Gulf governments themselves. Now, I will ask you now, what do you think of the U.S. is quietly warning its the Middle East partners about the cost of stocking up on Chinese-made weapons? Is this good, bad, and what do you think? What are the implications of such actions? I welcome your comments below. Just make sure that they're not you don't use threatening or derogatory language. The purpose is for constructive dialogue. That is to add something of value and productive to what the article said. Now let's go on to the third article. Before I read the third article, I would like to let you know, as usual, the purpose of the review of this article is for review, informational, and educational purposes. It is not to take credit for the intellectual property which belongs to the publisher, in this case, which is Politico, and the story and the author, which is Story by Gary Fino. That being said, let's get to the headline. Excuse me. Federal judge rejects push to block Florida Chinese land ownership law. First thing you see is a picture here. This is copyright Jeff Robertson of the AP photo. He says, "No one has made Disney more money recently than me," the Florida governor said on Monday. Coming out of Tallahassee, a federal judge on Thursday rejected attempts, including from the Biden administration, to block a new law touted by state Republicans and Governor Ron DeSantis that prohibits some Chinese citizens from buying land in Florida. U.S. District Judge Alan Windsor, who was appointed by former President Donald Trump, shot down the request from 4 Chinese immigrants and a real estate firm to place a preliminary injunction on the law while the case moved throughout the court. Windsor said those challenging the new law here have not demonstrated that they could win the case, a key factor in determining whether to block a law ahead of a full-blown trial. He also contended that the legal challenge has not shown that the Republican-controlled legislature was intentionally discriminating against Chinese individuals when it passed the restrictions. Quote, "Plaintiffs have not shown a substantial likelihood that unlawful animus motivated the legislature," Windsor said in his 51-page decision. The judge added that the new law was written in such a way that, quote, "it would apply to a person of Chinese descent domiciled in China the same way it would apply to a person not of Chinese descent domiciled in China, and is an application would never turn on a person's race," unquote. DeSantis and Republican Florida Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson said earlier this year that new law, which includes restrictions on lands near military bases, critical infrastructure, and agricultural land, was needed to protect Florida's farmland and food supply from the Chinese Communist Party. At the time he signed legislation into law, DeSantis called the Chinese Communist Party, quote, "the United States," unquote, "greatest geopolitical threat." Quote, and during the presidential campaign, DeSantis has repeatedly warned about the China with part of his platform, including a ban on selling farmland to Chinese Communist Party members and their affiliates. At least 3 other states, including Texas and Louisiana, considered similar laws this year. The Department of Defense in late June weighed in and contended the new law violated federal law and U.S. Constitution. These unlawful provisions cause serious harm to people simply because of their national origin, contravene federal civil rights laws, undermine constitutional rights, and will not advance the state's reported goal of increasing public safety, Department charge, and a, quote, "statement of interest," unquote. Well, that's something for you guys to to decide on your own. I have my own opinion, but I think I won't mention it here. The people in the groups that challenged the law, which they called, quote, racist, unquote, and they intended to appeal Windsor's ruling. Quote, this law is hurting immigrants who are trying to build lives in Florida, said Jin Song, an owner of a multi-choice reality LLC, and is one of them, suing in a statement. Quote, as a Chinese American who has called Orlando my home for 20 years, I've been extremely worried since the laws went into effect. Chinese citizens and Asian Americans living in Florida warned legislators last spring that they would face discrimination and harassment if the bill passed. Lawmakers passed the legislation overwhelmingly in a bipartisan vote in both the House and the Senate. The new law lists several countries as, quote, foreign country of concern, unquote, including China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela, and restricts property ownership for some residents from those countries. In addition, some Chinese citizens would be prohibited from purchasing more than 2 acres of land. And there are misdemeanor criminal penalties for property sellers who knowingly violate the law. So, in our view, which the U.S. government supported amicus, people from China should be no less welcome in Florida than they are elsewhere in the United States, and free to participate in the housing market on an equal footing with everyone else, said Derek Schaffer is a partner of Quinn Emanuel, who is helping represent those who sued. Now there is one video. I'll give you the link to this article so you'll be able to watch it. I do plan on watching the video as well. That's embedded in this article. I will pose the question to you. What do you think about federal judge rejects push to block Florida Chinese land ownership law? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think about it, and tell me why? Just keep in mind as some ground rules. Number 1, no threatening language, no derogatory language. Remember that the purpose of this discussion in the comments section is to have a constructive dialogue, not to belittle something, but to speak intelligently and in a productive way. All right. Now, I'll end our articles for today. I'd like to thank you for watching the video. Please click like on the video, that way it'll be pushing the algorithm and more people will be able to watch it and enjoy it. And be informed about the news, as that is the purpose of why I'm doing this review. Also, if you haven't already, please click subscribe on the channel, that way you'll have access to all my videos on the channel, especially where I have varying types of content on the channel that you'll be able to enjoy and benefit from. Also, if you haven't already, please click the bell button, that way you'll be notified of all my future videos. I would again like to thank you for watching the video. Take care in whatever part of the world you're in.